The consideration of a resolution opposing roadmap Rhode Island. I've distributed, or I've given you, or I will have given you, copies of my letters to the representative and senator, as well as a beginning of a draft of a town council resolution. We also are privileged to have with us Gary Morse, who will speak about this process.
Would we
absolutely? Yep. I don't know if the camera, are you going to be able to see that all right? All right. Could we ask that you use that podium there so we can capture you on camera? Sorry.
Yeah, it'd be easier. I can pull that podium over. So. Oh, sorry.
You gave me
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. My name is Gary Morse. I'm from Barrington. And to try and help you form some opinion on what you might want to do with the roadmap decision, I've been working on this issue for about 2 years now, and how I got involved in it was about 2 years ago I realized that what the state was attempting to do was carve out two distinct residential property taxpayers, where one would pay the full weight of their assessments, and the second class might pay something on the order of about 1/5 of a normal assessment. And I've been working on the property tax issue primarily, which is a part of roadmap as well. Recently, last April, I was making no progress on that. I filed a lawsuit in Superior Court, and so that is being challenged right now on the two distinct property tax regimen. But it is in roadmap, and so to give you just a little history of why we may be in a situation where there is controversy, what the General Assembly actually asked for on the first page there that's titled What the General Assembly Asked For, you can see 6 issues which really point to economic development. If you turn to the next page, what the General Assembly actually received instead, what the Planning Department went ahead and did is contact HUD for a grant, $1.9 million grant, and the state kicked in a little bit to complete this initiative, this study. The problem was the requirements of taking money from HUD were different than the requirements set forth by the General Assembly. HUD has 6 livability principles, and the essential ingredient of livability principles is this equitable fairness aspect that HUD has been pushing for several years now. So instead of an economic development plan, this is more of a social equity plan, not the intent of the General Assembly when it started out. If you turn to the next page, Roadmap Rhode Island equals HUD housing funds. That is, in fact, what happens when you take HUD funds, particularly things like CDBG grants, community development block grants. So for years, you may have been signing off on basic community development block grants. Most communities do it. And you never gave too much thought in Appendix C, where there's a little claim that says you are certifying compliance to affirmatively furthering fair housing. You probably didn't even know that it existed, but it does exist. And you probably have been signing off on these grants for years, not realizing that there is a huge liability that goes along with affirmatively furthering fair housing. Now, what happened in 2006, if you turn to the next page, just a quick description on affirmatively furthering fair housing. It's codified under federal law. I show the statutory reference there. And its compliance is based on statistical analysis of minority counts within the community. And they count down to the census block level, census block being perhaps a small delineation of roads within a certain area. But they're actually counting minority populations, and if you fall under certain thresholds, what HUD deems is you're probably not compliant with affirmatively furthering fair housing. And by non-compliance, it means you are statutorily required, if you have been taking community development block grants, to have a plan on file on how you will correct and increase those minority counts. So the next page is the Westchester County lawsuit. In 2006, Westchester had been signing off on these grants for years and realized, like most communities, we're probably compliant. Look at all the housing that we're building, and they were building a lot. The only problem was that Westchester was building it all down in Yonkers, not in Scarsdale or Newcastle or places like that. And what HUD claimed is that they had falsified their CDBG applications. When they said they were compliant with affirmatively furthering fair housing, HUD came in and said, well, wait a minute, show me the affordable housing in your $1 million neighborhoods in Scarsdale. And they said, well, we don't have any here because it's residential single-family zoning, and most of that is down in Yonkers. And HUD said, well, you violated AFFH, and you're now being sued. So a settlement was reached in 2009, and the statistics, the 3% and 7%, 3% African American and 7% Hispanic, comes right out of the settlement agreement. HUD was requiring that Westchester County look across its various municipalities and actually start counting all of the minorities in the different census blocks and actually come up with a plan to implement affordable housing beginning in those census blocks with the least number of minority counts. So it wasn't like they had a choice. This was in the settlement that you will find where there is the least amount of minorities, and you will start building there. So they assigned a monitor in 2009. The monitor is still on the job. He's a monitor on behalf of the court. And just a couple of months ago, he filed a report with the court and with Westchester County, and basically said, look, we found 6 municipalities within Westchester that are still violating the settlement agreement. And the reason that they're violating it is you have single-family residential zoning, and that's the violation. Because what HUD wants is to deconstruct single-family residential zoning. It's one of their stated goals, and their accusation is that it causes de facto segregation. So their intent is to eliminate single-family residential zoning and to build upon that in communities. Now, this is something that is being pushed now universally by HUD, that if you are now a community that takes community development block grants, they're taking the Westchester case nationwide. Now, I should point out that AFFH, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, if you can say that 3 times fast, has been around since 1968. It's part of the Fair Housing Act. So it's been around a long time. It's only been recently that HUD has started eyeing direct legal action against communities. Most of the action in the past has been in the federal courts between HUD and various organizations, so HUD was the plaintiff. But only recently is it now being realized that you can go out and you can sue a municipality if their statistics aren't coming in properly. So if we go to the next page, Roadmap Rhode Island versus the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, you might say, well, wait a minute, we already have this thing called the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act. We have to have inclusionary zoning. There is a difference. Under the LMHI, or LMIH, those are a set of goals. There are no mandates in the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act that you have to actually meet the 10%. The only mandate within that law is that you have to have an annual comprehensive community plan, and that plan has to be approved by the state. The mandate of that is supposed to give you a goal to try and improve your affordable housing stock, but it's not a mandate that you actually have to reach it, as opposed to the federal mandates under Roadmap if you take HUD funds. These are federal mandates. They are codified under federal law, and that's the issue. The LMIH is a set of goals. The AFFH is federal mandates that you must meet if you take HUD money. Now, the question of how come we haven't been sued in the past is a legitimate question. It's been around since 1968. How come nobody has been sued? It's only recently that HUD is beginning to work towards this initiative with legal action. And that's where this whole roadmap thing begins to take shape, is what are the events that are going to unfold for communities that raise their hand and, like Westchester did, and said, wait a minute, you know, we've got problems, we've got granite ledge everywhere, we cannot be putting in low-income housing just willy-nilly. Just because a lot is vacant doesn't mean we could actually build upon it. What the criticism of that in the Westchester case was, well, you never put those kinds of impediments in your community plan. You never actually came out and said you have problems with ledge. So the only problem that the court found in Westchester was single-family residential zoning, which they are now saying this is what you have to deconstruct. Now, we have a social equity advisory committee built into roadmap. That's the thing that, if you look at the roadmap plan, the last 4 pages, you see the covenants, so to speak, of the Social Equity Advisory Committee. They are clear that the federal mandates are now beginning to take shape in the state of Rhode Island. So the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act will become secondary to the federal mandates under roadmap. If you take HUD money, if you take HUD funds, that's the key. So to the issue of property taxes, which has been my 2-year quest, HUD does not look at the impact to property taxes or property values. So if you go in with a housing project in an existing single-family neighborhood, there's no question that single-family residential values are going to be impacted. There's no question that property taxes are probably going to be going up because the state is looking to tax these properties. Remember the 2-tiered tax system that I was talking about. The state is looking to have the folks that live within these kinds of elements pay a tax that's about 1/5 what their assessment actually should be. And those are numbers that I've worked up across the state. So if we turn to the next page, which is the issue of the impact on property taxes, which is my end. Again, Rhode Island already has one of the highest property tax burdens in the nation. And it's my personal belief that that's one of the things that's causing poverty in the state, is that no business in their right mind wants to come in. Our property taxes are through the roof. Roadmap has absolutely no solution for that. Their only solution is that maybe we can increase the number of tax credits and tax abatements. So they're actually making the problem worse. They're saying we'll give additional tax credits to people that work in growth centers and have houses in growth centers. Their whole system of trying to compartmentalize certain taxpayers at the expense of everybody else, I think is one of the worst business decisions we could ever make as a state. And it all depends upon the state endorsing this entire process of tax abatements for growth centers and for properties that are built under the roadmap plan. So they definitely want to be building, but they want those properties to be taxed at a lesser rate. So in my particular lawsuit, I am testing both the state, the legal aspect of it, and the constitutionality of a disparate taxation system for residential property owners. The issue being, if the state were paying all of the school budgets in every town, it might be one thing, but we as residential taxpayers have to pay most of the school property tax or school costs, and that's the primary issue that I have. On the last page there are people all over the country that are beginning to realize that this is a plan of HUD. Just the other day, this comes out of Hudson, Ohio, In Summit County, which is similar to like a Westchester County, there is Hudson, Ohio. They have opted out of their agreement with HUD. They are no longer going to be taking HUD funds. So this isn't an issue just for Rhode Island. This is beginning to be realized across the nation, that HUD dollars are not necessarily good for the community. Looks like free money, but there are strings attached that may not serve local communities very well. So with that, I just wanted to give you kind of a thumbnail description and answer any questions that you may have to help you in a decision.
Is the vulnerability to acceptance of HUD funds restricted to those HUD funds which are used for housing? Or is that by definition? My perception is that HUD manages the community development block grant funding in its entirety, but I may be mistaken.
No, not necessarily. And I should clarify something. I am not an attorney, so anything. Is the town solicitor with us tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, then I will be relying on your legal opinions on any of these matters. So I do not have any legal opinions on this, but here's the thing. HUD for years has taken a position that your plan is yours to keep in your file, and we don't come down and we don't look at it, and you don't submit it to us. It is your responsibility to ensure that your plan is compliant with HUD mandates. So this is where Westchester got into a jam, is they were accepting money, and at one point they accepted money to build a tennis court. And that was one of the things that kicked off. I mean, they made it clear, we want some money to, put up a tennis court for recreational purposes. And when they were sued, the issue was primarily that, yes, it may be good that you're doing this, but you're still not compliant to AFFH mandates. So the fact is, it's your responsibility as the town to make sure you're compliant. And so any fund, you take it for anything, a playground, a whatever, if it is HUD money, community development block grants, home funds, you are responsible to ensure that you're compliant with AFFH. And that could mean just about anything in HUD's view.
To use your example, the town that wishes to build a tennis court has no housing intention with the funds that it's receiving. So it is not improperly using those funds for one sort of housing or one sort of housing in one neighborhood. Rather, it's building a tennis court. But nonetheless, the fact that the money wasn't used or wasn't proposed to be used for improving or complying with the town's own regulations with respect to its housing was the issue?
Well, look at the issue for Westchester as the example. They went in and they just counted statistics, and they said, look, there's plenty of statistical evidence that you have enough coverage in Yonkers, but when we drive up to Scarsdale, there was zero.
Right.
And so Scarsdale and Newcastle and Bedford were all the places that stood out. And so HUD very clearly made the point that you haven't gotten diversity down to the neighborhood level. So you may have put housing in one corner of your community, but when we drive to the other side of your community, there's nothing there.
Right.
And so therefore, you should have had a plan, and that plan should have said, we build no tennis courts until we've got...
I see. Okay. You improperly sought funds for a tennis court
yes.
before you solved your housing?
Yes.
Sounds a lot like socialism.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. And thanks for your work on that. That's quite a clear explanation. I have given you a suggested wording for a resolution, actually the beginning of that, as well as the letter that I sent to the legislators. I suppose the first question is, we are being asked to join in providing a resolution of our council, and I think our attitude was at our last meeting, we certainly did oppose this, and I was asked to write a letter expressing that to our representatives. Are you of a mind to create a resolution that more explicitly states that? And the proposal that I have in front of you is the beginning of such a thing, but I would add perhaps some words that develop out of this.
Yeah, I'll move that we go forward with the resolution and use this template you started. And go forward and submit this.
So perhaps the motion might be that the council is in agreement that a resolution of the council is necessary to express our position, and that I'm directed to return to the next meeting with the draft of such a resolution for our consideration.
Yeah.
I think that the timeliness was originally an attempt to intercept the statewide planning commission's vote. That's in the past now and was unanimously counter to what we're suggesting. So it seems to me we need to focus on making sure the General Assembly is aware that, and I believe the Speaker is quite aware, but that he is aware that Little Compton joins in opposition to this, the use of this planning document, if that's what we could call it, for the purposes that have been explained to us this evening.
Well, it's not an economic development plan. That's pretty obvious from what we've been presented today. It's a redistribution of wealth plan, so.
Well, and to be more direct, it's an economic destruction plan. That's maybe strong, but it's an economic anti-development plan. All right, motion is made and seconded for me to do that or to return to you at the next meeting on January 8th. Is there further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much for edifying us. Mr. Liu, good to see you as well. Thanks.